campaign is all about freedom, prosperity, and peace. The one thing we have to remember is you cannot have freedom without life. We must preserve all life if we expect to protect the individual liberty of each and every one of us. And that means the unborn as well. Let me assure you, as an OB doctor and as one that has studied history and economic policy and politics for a long time, I can assure you that life begins at conception. Life begins at conception, and as an OB doctor, I have the legal responsibility of taking care of that life. There is no reason in the world that this government can't protect life rather than the destruction of life like they do when they finance abortion. That has to stop. The most important way that needs to be stopped is the reversal and the elimination of that horrible ruling. Roe versus Wade must be reversed. I am an advocate, a very strong advocate, of following very strictly the rule of law, the Constitution of the United States. The Constitution was written very precisely to restrain the power and force of government and to protect the liberties of each and every one of us. But there are a few very, very important responsibilities of the federal government. One is to provide for a strong national defense. Unfortunately, we have allowed our defense to slip. We are now overreached and we have been weakened. We have a terrible problem to deal with the threat of terrorism, and we are not handling that well. There has to be a better understanding of the cause of terrorism so that we can deal with this serious, serious problem. I think 9/11, quite frankly, could have been prevented if we had had a lot more respect for the Second Amendment. Freedom means self-responsibility and self-reliance. It also means you get to keep the fruits of your labor. But on 9/11, the responsibility for protecting passengers had been diverted to centralized bureaucratic government. The government told us that we would be safe, that we weren't allowed to resist hijackers, and there was a prevention for having guns on the airlines. The airlines weren't even permitted to protect their passengers and their equipment. So respect for the Second Amendment certainly would go a long way. Matter of fact, if you look at every single problem we're facing today, it's because of the lack of respect for the rule of law and the Constitution. The answers can be found in the return to the rule of law and a strict interpretation of the Constitution. Liberty means that we have freedom of choice. The right to life issue is not an issue of freedom of choice. That is a definition of life. But as individuals and as families and as communities, we should have freedom of choice. One of the most important choices that we should have, and we're allowing it to slip away, is the freedom of choice to educate our children. What we need is a restatement so make sure that homeschoolers and private schools are never attacked by our government. Has it been since the Republican Party stood for getting rid of the Department of Education and getting rid of the Department of Energy? Where are we today? We have allowed our nation to be overtaxed and overregulated and overrun by bureaucrats. The founders would be ashamed of us for what we're putting up with. We have a very unfair tax system. We need a fair tax system. That means getting rid of the IRS and repealing the 16th Amendment. A strong national defense means that we have an understanding of national sovereignty. That is slipping away from us today. The neoconservatives have taken over for the traditional conservatives, and they do not have the respect for our national borders that they should. We do not any longer have national sovereignty. We have deferred too much to the United Nations, the IMF, the World Bank, and the WTO, the NAFTA, and the CAFTA agreements, and they should not be part of our system. That is one of the reasons why we've been weak on immigration, and we need to reassess that. We should never reward illegal immigration. We should revalue this idea, the misinterpretation of the Constitution, that anybody who is just born here as a natural citizen, that needs to be revisited. At the same time, we cannot solve the problem of immigration unless we address the subject of the welfare state. Welfare does not help our working conditions in this country. Disincentives for individuals not to work. At the same time, illegals come here, and if you're in a local community or a state, you're mandated by the federal government to provide free education and free medical care, and that's wrong. We have a chance to do something this campaign and in this election. We can continue the way we've been going, accumulate more and more big government, assume that the people won't take care of themselves, but it's coming to an end. We have financed the warfare state and the welfare state by overtaxing, over-borrowing, and then we resort to printing money, which is destroying our monetary system. Financial markets today are very shaky. A lot of people don't understand what's happening, but there has been predictions of this. It was well known. Bubbles are created by the Federal Reserve System, and to tell you the truth, the Constitution doesn't provide for a central national bank. It doesn't even provide for a Federal Reserve System. It was never meant that the politicians would spend that will, and then if they come up short, they merely print the money. It doesn't make any sense whatsoever. No wonder why we have this huge runaway government. We now have a national debt of $9 trillion. We have entitlements of $70 trillion, and we're dumping on the laps of these young people who are upset about what we're giving them, and we need to change it. We get a bunch of politicians in Washington that like to be re-elected and they like power. So therefore they say, what do you need? You need stuff here, there, whatever. And the politicians gives it to them, they get re-elected. Now there's something happening now. It's not going to play anymore because the country is going bankrupt. We don't have the facility to do it. Our good jobs have gone overseas. We can't run the war and we can't run our domestic spending without borrowing $2.5 billion every single day, most of it coming from, unbelievably, the Chinese. This has to change. But it cannot change without a reassessment of what we believe in. Do we believe in the Constitution? Do we believe that we should have the rule of law? Do we believe that sound money ought to be gold and silver and not break printed money on thin air?